and welcome to the Mongoose Publishing YouTube channel. I'm Liv Kennedy, and I'm joined today by Matthew Sprange. Matthew Sprange, tell us more about yourself.
Hey there, I'm Matthew. I'm the Managing Director of Mongoose Publishing, and we make games.
You do make games, that's true. I'm privy to that information, as are a lot of you. Why don't you tell us a bit about how you got into TTRPGs?
That started when I was very, very small in primary school. We kicked off with the Fighting Fantasy and Lone Wolf solo books.
Okay.
Did those for a couple of years, and then there was a teaching assistant, saw we were doing them, said, I've got a game you want to try. It was Tunnels and Trolls. After that, I went out, picked up the Red Box Basic D&D, and never looked back.
Yep, it's a gateway drug indeed, you know, and here we are now. So what made you decide to create Mongoose Publishing?
Didn't want a real job.
Yeah, I've heard you say this. Tell me more. So, like, just you don't like being told what to do.
Well, sort of. I mean, I was bumming around as a field engineer fixing computers. My oldest friend had just come out of the army. He was officer in the signals, and the D20 license had been running for a good few months. I just turned to him in the pub one day and said, "So, should we start an RPG company or what?"
I love that. Just like slip it casually into conversation for sure. Like, so what was like the process of making it? Like, how did you create Mongoose?
In what way?
So like, what was the process of just setting everything up? Like, and you have the D20 license. Was it just like you obviously took that and then built off of that?
Yeah, should point out, we didn't have a clue what we were doing.
Sure.
Neither of us had been involved in publishing before, never dealt with printers. I'd done a little bit of gaming writing for the likes of Games Workshop and a couple of smaller outlets, just tiny freelancer stuff. I'd never written anything more than 4,000 words in length. And our very first book, small by today's standards, but that was going to be racking up 18,000 words. So I had that to worry about.
So you were taking on like the kind of writing aspect of things, okay?
Yeah, and my business partner Alex, he was trying to get to grips with printers and accountants and distributors,
all that jazz.
And we made a lot of mistakes, but somehow we muddled through it.
Yeah, you're still here. What was the first like 6 months like?
Hectic. We didn't have a lot of money back then. But we'd managed to scrape together enough that we could print 3 32-page books, which ended up being the Slayer's Guides. We could get those printed and off to market without receiving any money at all from distribution, because we just presumed they'd be late in paying. As it turns out, they weren't. But they hit the market like a bullet because they were sufficiently different from anything else out there. We were doing very, very well. And somewhere along the line, it occurred to us, well, if we make X doing 1 book a month, if we do 2 books, we'll get 2X. And it kind of ramped up from there. We went to bigger books, first to 64 pages, then to 128. Did our first hardback book. Started dabbling with licenses. Judge Dredd was the first. And that was all in the first 6 months.
Wow, there's a lot crammed into that short amount of time. Can you tell me more about how like D20 was different to what was already on the market?
It was a unifying force for the first time on a proper level. For the first time, anybody could effectively put out supplements for Dungeons and Dragons without going through a complicated licensing procedure. All you needed to do was understand the open game license, which publishers at the time at least half understood it. That was the big motivating factor. And we were late to the market. The D20 license had already been out for I think about a year before we released anything. And by that time, I drew up this big chart. There was already over 100 companies that had either released stuff or were about to release stuff for the D20 license. It was an absolute shark pit. Very, very
oversaturated. Yes. I bet.
And the only thing we really had in our favor at the time, firstly, we had a degree of organization, being able to bring out 3 titles in the first 3 months, one after the others. That showed retailers, distributors, and gamers that we were serious.
Yeah.
We would support our stuff. We were going to stick around. It wasn't just a one and done. And also we'd done something very different. Absolutely everyone, except White Wolf, they had done their creature collection catalogue right on the cusp of on the launch of the D20 license. Everybody else was absolutely just doing 32-page adventures, so plenty of adventures around. And we were going to do the same thing. I drew up plans for titles we could do, and I just stared at it and thought, why the hell are we doing the same thing everybody else was? Everybody else was. And I recalled the old ecology articles in Dragon magazine. They were like 3 or 4 pages focusing on one creature, expanding it out from like the 2 paragraphs you get in the monster manual back then. So I thought, well, we could do a 32-page ecology article on one specific creature. We picked the hobgoblins for our first book because I thought they were quite cool, and still do, to be honest. And that immediately got attention because while it was the same format, the same cost as a 32-page adventure, it was sufficiently different that it got attention. Okay,
so you made a ripple in that oversaturated market.
We did. And from there, we went on to the 64-page Encyclopedia Arcanes, which each one basically introduced a variant form of magic. So demonology was our first, necromancy was the second. In January 2002, so just over 6 months from when we started, we released the Quintessential Fighter, which was a 128-page, completely player-facing book. And that's when things just went ballistic. By the time we got to, March or April, we'd been releasing one Quintessential class book every month. We were selling one book every 30 seconds.
Wow.
They were outselling some WotC titles at the time. They were incredibly successul. They're one of the reasons we're in this office at the moment and not working out of our bedrooms still.
Big thank you to those books.
I say we ended up doing Slayer's Guides and Quintessentials, releasing one a month on each line for about 3 years. Something like 36 odd books in each line.
Yeah. How was that time for you?
Hectic, very hectic. Didn't know what we were doing. We expanded way too quickly. We started bringing on staff, never had staff before, didn't really know how to handle them. I mean, there's Lord Sugar has this saying that he's made every mistake in business. I haven't done that, but I've made a huge amount.
What's the day-to-day running of a TTRPG company like for you?
It's not the same. I mean, there's some stuff you have to do every single day. There's some things that have to be done every week, every month. But aside from that, every day is kind of different. I mean, I've got a list of things that I want to get achieved every day, a list of things I want to get achieved every week. It ends up being a triage process. You do the important thing and other stuff just gets rolled into the next day or the next week. I mean, this week I've been planning to do more writing on Dark Conspiracy. I've managed to do one box text for that, but I kind of got disrupted because we launched a new AI policy for the TAS program, which has inspired some debate. So we've got to keep up on top of the feedback we've been getting on that and responding to it as well.
What's the debate? So I guess for context, we'll just say that we have said that with the TAS program, the Traveller's Aid Society, AI art is not permitted to be included whatsoever. So.
Yeah, I mean, it was already there for AI-generated text, but we're also saying AI-generated art is a no-no now. There have been a couple of titles using it, and we've kind of grandfathered them in. We're not going to go back and disrupt people, but we're saying from now on, no more.
Yeah.
And you, as with any debate with AI, it divides into two camps. You got the people saying, yes, let's support the artists, let's support human beings. And you got the other side saying, well, don't be Luddites. AI is unavoidable. You should be embracing it. While both points of view are certainly relevant, that's not the argument that made us do this. What I'm worried about is the very near future, where people can effectively hit a button, type a prompt,
Yeah.
and generate complete titles, whether it's books, gaming books, novels, video games, films and TV. And at that point, I
have something
can
to be worried
foresee
about,
the
yeah.
likes of Netflix and Amazon just creating a tsunami of this AI generated material. People do their jobs, they go back home, and they're just plugged into machine generated material. And I think that's not going to be great for society.
No.
We can't do anything about that. That's unavoidable. What we can do is create a little traveller shaped island in that sea.
Yeah.
Maybe. We'll see how it goes.
Oh, fingers crossed. We're doing it. We're trying our best. But so you said that you suddenly had employees, and that was a shock to the system. Like, how has Mongoose Publishing changed over the years, from like those first 6 months to having those employees to start with, and then to now?
We got organised.
Congrats.
Because we didn't have the organisation to begin with. We had no managerial structure back then, which was a big problem as we began to expand. We went up to like 25 odd employees.
That's wild to hear.
But without management structure, that really doesn't work. And we discovered that in all the worst possible ways. And from that, I mean, there's this old thing that was it 50% of businesses fail within the first year. In the first 3 years, it rises up to like 75 or 80% or something.
Wow.
And I know why that is now. I mean, the ones that fail in the first year, they just had a bad idea or didn't do things right, and they just fail. That's easy to understand. For the others, it's how you handle expansion. If you don't manage that, you get hit with cash flow problems, you get hit with production problems, and if you can't manage those, then the business fails.
Sure.
And Mongoose went through difficult times while we figured all that out. And part of the problem was Alex was very good on the business side, but he wasn't a creative.
Sure.
I was a creative, but purely on the writing side. So I'd never really understood visual art. I still don't, to be honest. So when I set up employees to produce books, first thing I did was employ writers. That was easy. I can understand writers. But when it came to laying out the books, I set up a system whereby one person would take the manuscript and writer, edit it, lay it out, commission the art. And that's not the way to do it.
Okay.
I now know. But no, you can see the change. If you go through Mongoose's books over the years, you can see when we started employing proper graphic artists to lay out our books, there was a massive change there.
Yeah. One that I'm assuming you're very proud of.
Yeah.
Good.
Don't understand the art still, but if you got good artists, you don't need to. Just do what they tell you.
Yeah, they'll take the reins for sure. What would you describe, if any, your leadership style?
These days, I mean, as I say, we move towards employee ownership, and it's all about empowering the people to have responsibility and authority about their own working lives. So partly it's by demonstration. So I mean, it's the easy things like not shirk jobs because you don't want to do them. Go ahead and do the jobs. Other people will see you do the jobs, and they'll begin taking the reins. But the analogy I always use is the Catcher in the Rye. You got the story in the book where there's children are playing in the rye fields, but it's right on the edge of a cliff, and they come running out. You got a guy there that catches them before they run off the cliff. That's me. Let people here make their decisions and only step in when they're about to crash the entire company. It's okay for them to make mistakes. It's okay for those mistakes to have a financial cost, as long as people learn from them.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think that's a really nurturing way to look at things. What are your kind of goals for your employees as well? Because you spoke about kind of like nurturing them. So what are you thinking for everyone?
Be happy, be the best they can be in their work, and live a decent life outside work. So I mean, we've mentioned this before, but one thing I want to do is make sure people are in their own homes, so they're not paying massive amounts of money to a landlord every month. They're instead paying it to a mortgage, which sort of kind of is paying into their own bank, as it were.
Yeah.
So it's things like that. Have a decent life, do good work, and enjoy it.
Yeah, work-life balance to the extreme.
Yes.
Yeah, we love that. So you spoke about giving the company to your employees. Like, tell us about it. Why are you giving your company away? What's going on?
What else am I going to do with it? I mean, a few years ago, before I started thinking along these lines, Mongoose had a bit of a windfall. I think it was royalty check from the Victory at Sea video game, which had been done completely outside the company. All we'd really done was we'd already produced the book, so we gave that book to the video game company, and they made a video game out of it.
Sure.
So there really wasn't any direct work. It was basically bonus money coming in. And I'd already allocated a few bits and pieces to do with that, but there was money left over. I looked at it and said, why don't I just give this to the employees? Can I do that? Can I just add more to a salary 1 month? Turns out you can.
Cool.
And it wasn't a lot of money. It was, I think it was like 250 quid each or something.
Nothing to sniff at.
But I mean, that's not going to change anyone's life. But £250 extra when you're in a very averagely paid job, suddenly occurred to me that actually has an effect. I mean, you could buy at the time the new games console, or you could actually put into savings or get that piece of furniture that you've always been after. And it's completely out of the blue. That does have a positive effect. So you start thinking, well, if I can do this once, why can't I do it more? So that's how it kind of snowballed. But on the other side of the fence, I never really wanted the big mansion, the 3 cars, the yacht. That doesn't really interest me at all. So again, what else am I going to do with it?
Sure. So you're just putting it back into the company and
pretty much, yeah,
to the employees, which I can tell you right now is not something that happens very often. And I know that you're aware of that, and you're trying to be like, hey, what if other companies did this?
Well, that's the thing. You can get rather evangelical about it, talking to people in other games companies. The 2 problems you have on larger companies might have additional shareholders. That will kill this immediately.
Sure.
It's just not in their interest. That's how capitalism works.
Yep.
The other problem is if they have children, because you get the whole thing. Oh, one day, son, all this will be yours, and I don't think that's good for the employees or the company itself. Possibly not even the art.
Yeah.
So those are the 2 main stumbling blocks. But I'll keep trying.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that you're getting the word out there. I think it's pretty cool. So can you tell us about how Mongoose acquired Traveller?
Well, it all started off, I'd have to think back, 2007? We've been picking up various licenses, and the one criteria we always had for a license was that at least one person in the company had to be absolutely dippy about the property. So there's some passion behind it. And we'd done film and television. We'd done Judge Dredd and Babylon 5, Conan the Barbarian. And we started looking at the RPGs we used to play when we were kids. So I think I'm right in saying we'd already done Paranoia. And Traveller was another big one we used to play. So I managed to track Mark Miller down, gave him a phone call and said, hey, we'd quite like to do a new version of Traveller. And he said, well, I'm already doing what would eventually become T5. And I said, that's a shame. Never mind. Thanks for talking to me. He says, well, no, hang on a minute. Let's talk about this.
Okay.
And we had conversations, and we got a license to do a new edition of Traveller. And it did very well for us. It got to the point where it was doing a big proportion of all our business. And at that point, you start thinking, what happens if something happens to the license, something inadvertent? Because we got people here whose livelihoods, their mortgages, their families depend to a large degree on Traveller. So I had a conversation with Mark, and he said, well, I've been thinking about this. And I've already decided that in the event of his inevitable, Traveller will be passed over to us. Great, that solves that problem. Thank you very much, Mark.
Thank you, Mark.
Thought more about it. Went back to him. Supposing, if you're going to do this anyway, supposing we gave you some monies and you passed it over to us now. He was receptive to the idea, so then it just became a question of how much. I had a lower amount in mind. He had a bigger amount in mind, but we had that range to work with.
Ballpark, yeah.
And we found common ground there. And then just became the process of getting all the paperwork together, lawyers getting involved, making sure that everything was legal and we could demonstrate that it did in fact all belong to Mark, and that he was passing it all over to us. And there's a big thick document because Traveller over the years has been through many different hands, either as main publishers or as third-party publishers, and Mark has spent a lot of time bringing that all together under one umbrella again. So there's a big, thick document demonstrating all of that, and that's what took the time. It took a little over a year to sort all the paperwork out.
But at that point, you were still creating Traveller stuff, content. Can you tell me what the process of creating a TTRPG is, like from the idea's inception to actually publishing?
It can be a little bit different for each one. I mean, there is a difference. I'm working on Dark Conspiracy at the moment, and that has a big leg up in that it uses the Traveller core system. So to a degree, I don't need to worry about the absolute central core mechanics. It becomes more a process of how do these mechanics fit in with what we want to do with Dark Conspiracy, because there are big differences. So that starts off with a draft of the Traveller core rulebook, and I'm literally going through and deleting everything that isn't Dark Conspiracy, changing words and phrases to make it Dark Conspiracy, then taking a step back, right, what's missing, what actually needs to change in the core mechanics, and what else needs adding to make it Dark Conspiracy.
Nice. Can you tell us more about Dark Conspiracy?
Basically, it is a horror game.
Nice.
You have your players, we call them operatives in the first Dark Conspiracy game, are just starting to be aware that there's something very nasty in the world, something very malevolent, and they've got a dual role of trying to find out what it is, gathering information, gathering intelligence, and then nullifying it.
Putting a stop to it,
And there's different ways of playing this game. We've made sure there's different campaign styles. So it could be something like, you could play it like X-Files, you could play it like X-Files with guns.
Fun.
You could go full military, you're a squad, you're deployed to these trouble areas. We've even made sure you can play it like Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Perfect.
With a bunch of people who aren't really skilled at all, but they're kind of thrown into it. Maybe there's one teacher type person who does know something at least. But we're going to be doing 3 Dark Conspiracy games in all, covering 3 different timelines. So the first one's set basically in our world, or maybe 1 or 2 years ahead, where no one really knows what the danger is, and they're trying to find out. Second is going to be more like the original Dark Conspiracy, where people are certainly aware of what's going on. Society has begun to break down, and that's going to be set 12, 15 years after the first one.
Bit too close for my liking, but yeah.
And in the final one, it's open war with the malevolent beings, and the players are now in a position where they're effectively running the whole defense of Earth. So there's a lot of dimensional travel in there, high technology, resource management. But we've set it up so, in theory, you could create a character in the first one and take that character all the way through to the end if you want the grand campaign, or you just pick the timeline you want to play in.
Yeah, you could even make it like the relatives of like people you played before, or whatever.
Potentially, yeah.
Whatever you fancy. Can you tell us what your goals are for Mongoose and the future of Mongoose? What do you want to see in like 5 years, 10 years?
I want to still be here. That's the big thing, and that's not, without being glib, that's not a dead cert. I mean, you got the rise of AI, you've got possible fall of capitalism, you've got climate change coming along, and these are the things I tend to worry about when it comes to the future of Mongoose, rather than whether Traveller's still going to be popular in 5 years' time. It's been around for nearly 50 years. I think it's
It's doing all right.
It's got some legs left on it, yeah. But in terms of where the company is and what it's actually doing, I'd like to push forward our properties into other mediums. It's probably not going to be us doing it, but we've got the likes of Traveller Comics at the moment. There's a Traveller video game on the way.
Very cool.
We are talking to people about TV and film for Traveller, whether that happens or not. But I do have this dream, and I'd like it to happen relatively soon, where we're sitting in the cinema, and you've got the title screen come up. Traveller, originally created by Mark Millar. I'd like Mark to be in the cinema when we do that.
Yeah.
But when it comes to video games and films and television, things take forever.
Long process, yeah.
So that's something we just got to keep plugging away at. But the same applies to 2300, Twilight 2000, Dark Conspiracy. Within the company itself, I want everyone working here to be millionaires. We have a little way to go on that just yet, but step by step.
Yeah, I mean, look, I love to hear it. Speaking of your employees, what do you look for in employees and freelancers? Like, how do you choose them?
They've got to have the passion. When it comes to employees, they've got to be gamers. In the past, we have employed non-gamers, and they have been good, but they don't get the games. And if you don't get the games, you're nowhere. So
it's a very specific type of nerd that we
it
all
is.
are.
I mean, in terms of writers, they have to specifically know our games, not just mechanics, but the background. With people we just bring in, we can be a bit more flexible, but they have to understand what RPGs are and how they work.
Sure.
They've got to have an obvious passion, and they've got to have some talent.
Yeah. Thank you. So how do you support third-party writers, like through the like Taz and stuff like that?
The D20 license got a lot to answer for, because while it did provide a mechanism for anybody to publish almost anything to directly support Dungeons and Dragons, it also brought in an air of officialdom. Like if you do anything for D&D, it's got to use the D20 license, even if you're not selling it, which is a problem for RPGs because there's always been a culture. Before then, there was always a culture of homemade, fan-made material, games masters posting up their games and things online, and that is something we don't ever want to stop. But because of the D20 license and the expectations people have, we need to now put a proper framework in place for that. So it basically goes, for Traveller, it goes in basically one of three lines. There's the fair use policy that Mark Millar created to let people basically do whatever they want. So long as they don't try and charge money for it, you can do whatever you want with Traveller. We extended that to all editions of Traveller, covers 2300, Twilight, and Dark Conspiracy at the moment. So we managed to open it up to the other games. And as long as you're not charging money, so long as you're not reprinting huge swathes of existing books, you can basically do what you want.
Great.
The Taz program covers our current edition of Traveller. We've just opened it up to Classic Traveller, and a little later this year, we're also going to be adding 2300 to it. Is basically a way for people to produce commercial titles they can actually charge money for and directly support Traveller. There's a few little rules to follow, but really not much at all. It allows us to open up not just the mechanics for Traveller, but the Charted Space universe as well. So if you want to write your own supplement on the Fifth Frontier War and base it on what we've already published for Fifth Frontier War, you can do that. Okay. Finally, we have the Traveller Compatibility License. This is the big heavyweight license for people who want to do publishing in a more serious way. So they're actually printing books, they're actually selling them at conventions to retailers and what have you. That doesn't have a royalty attached to it, but you do have to follow more strict rules on it.
What project can you tell us about that you're excited for that's coming up?
At the moment, it's all about Dark Conspiracy.
I was going to say, yeah.
We're about 100 pages in at the moment, but all we've been working on so far is the core mechanics and the player-facing side of things. So how to create a character, how those characters work and engage with the world. What we haven't done yet, and we're going to be tackling this in September, October, is the conceptualization of the dark minions, the extra dimensional nasties in the game, because the whole premise of the new Dark Conspiracy will rest on that, how good it is, how they look, how they actually work. And once the artists have figured out where they want to go with that, then we can start integrating into the rules. And hopefully everybody sees results summer next year. That's the hope I've got.
Yeah, keep an eye out. Follow us on social media for updates and just check out the website. It's all there. So what advice can you give to people who are looking to break into the TTRPG industry?
It is so different. I guess it is in a way. So different to how it was when we started. I mean, PDF books were around at the time, but they were nothing like they were today. And because of that, the PDF only market is very, very crowded. The reason I say that isn't so very different is there were over 100 D20 publishers when we joined, and they were all printing books. So you got to do something different. Yeah, it is a bit of a paradox. Do something different, but also something people are familiar with. I mean, there's a reason we don't do a different game system with every new RPG we bring out. I mean, we bring out Dark Conspiracy next year. It'll have the Traveller Core rules. So there's a whole bunch of people out there who already know basically how the games work. It's not something completely new. You don't have to relearn everything. That's why a lot of the third-party 5th edition D&D books have been doing so well. It's instantly familiar. It's instantly recognizable. While that might irk some people on the creative side, there's still an awful lot of scope for your own input, and you're not starting from scratch. Once you're established, then you can perhaps start exploring.
Once you've proven yourself.
This is true. Yeah. On the other hand, there's always exceptions to this.
This is true. This is very true. What would you say to people who might be looking to get in touch with Mongoose to like do some writing or art or whatnot?
Get in touch with us. We'll sort you out.
And there you have it, folks. Thank you so much, Matt, for coming to chat to us today. Anything you want to round off with? Anything you'd like to say to the people?
No, I think we're good. Keep playing Traveller and keep exploring charted space.
Keep an eye on our social media channels and our website for updates. And check out the description for anything that we've spoken about in this video that you might be interested in. But thank you so much for watching, and we'll speak to you again soon.